are still in chapter 4. We're going to stay on this topic of joy and how we get to lead our brain with joy in this science. It's kind of a part 2 to the previous video, because joy is so much a part of Philippians. It's like I said, it's weaved in and out through the entire book. We're going chapter by chapter, verse by verse, and I've got more to share with you on how this wonder of joy and why it weaves in and out of everything, and it matters so much for our full lives. So let's begin with Philippians 4:1. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stay true to the Lord. I love you and long to see you, dear friends, for you are my joy and the crown I receive for my work. Joy is one of the best ways for us to stay true to God. Even in our imperfect progress, joy is the foundation for a secure bond with God. If we can find these moments of joy, find these faces of joy, we find ourselves becoming even more and more secure with God. When I trust that God is happy with me and smiling at me, this joy naturally removes fear in this relationship with God. This is why those verses in number 6 again, this very famous benediction, is also important when we think about this. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And don't those words just fill you with warmth? And that helps you create this secure attachment with God. Now, when we put on a mask, and I don't mean like a COVID mask, I mean you're putting on this fake self to get along with people, to fit in with certain people, your joy starts decreasing. It's just think about those situations when you have to be somebody else and you find it hard, or you find your joy simply decreasing about that. Or when churches foster an environment that encourage us to put on a happy face when we're really suffering, you will quickly find yourself running out of joy. And think of the joyless church services you've been to, and when you have kind of wanted to put a mask on just to survive that service, because it's just, you just need to get out of there. So you put on a mask that you're fine, but there's just, your joy has been zapped out of you. Do you know that feeling here? So we try to sustain our faith lives when we feel that zapping. We try to sustain our faith lives like something's wrong. God and I are distant. So let me do more Bible reading. Let me do more prayer. Let me try a fast so I can connect with God again. And sometimes we try a fast and it's really more like a punishment. Let me connect with God. So let me do this bargain and I'll fast for 3 days to connect with God again. Remember, again, look at the video from the last one. All those praying, Bible reading, fasting, these are left brain activities. And our brain runs on the feel of joy, and that's a right brain activity. I'm going to put up this image again that we used. It's from the book, The Other Half of Church by Jim Wilder. This is his image explaining to us how the brain works. So you're looking at it right now. You see that our emotions and joy runs our right side. And we talked about this. Joy comes when we see faces, or we see and connect with eyes, not with eyes behind masks, where we connect with eyes, where we hear a voice. And all of a sudden that brings joy to our hearts. And then that moves everything over into our left brain. And if you look in your left brain here, you see here, this is where your speech and your problem solving and cause and effect and the boundaries you put on your life happen. But the right brain works just a tick faster than your left brain. So you need the fuel of joy to process the rest of your life. Okay? So again, joy is this foundation of a secure bond with God. Now, we need people in our lives. I'm going to start with this. When life hurts so much, we tend to isolate. We remove ourselves from those faces so they don't see us. They don't have to feel our burdens. They don't need to bear our burdens. They don't need to know what's really going on in my life. They don't really care. You see how this, with this isolation, how that happens, and we're removing ourselves from faces? So I'm going to give this quote from Beth Moore of what isolation leads to. This is her wisdom. Isolation leads to addictions are nursed, wounds are licked, imaginations run wild, facts give way to fiction, grudges are nursed, you are offended over everything, offenses become unpardonable, friends become suspects, those we differ with become demonized, and you come to believe that God is not there, that God is not good, that God is not faithful, that God is not fair, and that God will never forgive you. Right? To see how that isolation speeds up, to all of a sudden you have an insecure bond with God. With you're just trying to not be a burden to other people, so you're going to withdraw and deal with your problem on your own. But when you're doing that, you see how things got worse and worse, and you finally end up to believe that God is not there. Have you prayed that? God, where are you? That God is not good, that God is not faithful. Have you like prayed these things when you've been suffering? That God is not fair and that God will never forgive you? One of those cures to that is to get out of isolation, to get back with faces, to find that joy again, because we want to be there. Now, some simple benefits of joy, and I'm building to something here. Some benefits of joy are, I feel like I belong. When I see your face wants to be with my face, I feel like I belong. I feel more stable when things go wrong. It is easier to be myself. When I'm full of joy, it's much easier to be myself. And I feel free to share my heart with God and with others. Like vulnerability is a lot easier when I know your face is with me. When I know you want to be with me and our eyes are meeting. There's that connection, that joy. My brain is reading joy. I find myself being more brave. So here's some more science added to this. Joy is what they call a supra-emotion, S-U-P-R-A, where joy is able to attach and sit on top of another emotion. So you're able to be sad and feel joy at the same time. That makes sense, right? You're able to feel angry and feel joy at the same time. So this makes complete sense then out of James 1 and 2, where it says, dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. Here in your great troubles, you will also have great joy, because this joy emotion, which is attached to faces and attached to relationships, has a way of attaching itself to that suffering problem that you're going through. And this is not just James 1:2. This is also Habakkuk 3:17-18, Acts 5:41, Acts 16:23-25, 2 Corinthians 6:10, and 1 Peter 4:12 and 13. This is all has the same concept, that joy attaches itself in times of suffering. So joy then helps us regulate these painful emotions. And this is how our brains are designed to work. You can easily see that when you're in a time of sadness or of despair, you are overwhelmed in that. And then you find yourself isolated and you can't attach joy to it then. You become stuck and more stuck. But when we can share our burdens with somebody, when we decide to finally turn it over to God and we give this honest prayer, and maybe, God, you're unfair, but we get this honest prayer with God and we see God's face shine on us. Our brain starts receiving joy again. And that goes over into our left brain to help that problem solving, cause and effect part, truth part to kick in. And a crazy thing, or good thing, it's crazy good, right? With the super emotion of joy, we can feel that God is with us in our pain. That this is such a painful season and something unfair really did happen. Something awful really did happen. But when I get moments of joy, and it could be, just a gut-breaking laughter with somebody, or a card I got in the mail from somebody and I see that person's face and they wrote me something really personal in a card, and I feel the joy like warm my soul. Then in those moments, I also can feel that God is with me, that God has not abandoned me. Again, joy is part of a secure bond with God. And then you feel this whole other level of joy when you allow others to carry your pain or to share your burdens. I wrote a whole short, wonderful book on this called I Wish I Could Take Away Your Pain, about what I learned from the people who have carried the pain in my life. These are the people who, when I was in the depths of despair, showed up in my life with their faces and helped me carry my pain. And it's in the book. It's about them. And some of those faces right now are not in my life anymore, but what they have done for me is forever my life story. They are a part of my life. I will be forever grateful, a life of gratitude towards them, because they showed up when I was feeling crazy thinking in my head, and they told me things. They told me things like, this pain is going to end. And I could say I knew that from the Bible reading. I was a pastor, after all, in this deep, deep despair. So I knew this in my Bible reading, but at that point of despair, I did not know that anymore. And this beautiful face would show up and tell me that this pain is going to end. Changed my life because I believed that face. There was joy connected. Our eyes met. The voices were heard, and my brain read joy, which allowed me to go to my left brain and start problem solving and processing. There was something, another thing these people told me. They would remind me of God's promises. And again, I'm a pastor, right? I know God's promises. I've given these promises to other people as a pastor. But in my despair, hearing God's promises from that face made all the difference in the world, because then I could begin to believe it. There was joy as that was given to me, so then my brain could run better and move to my left side, and I could start believing that that promise was actually for me. This is why funerals are a gathering of people. It is a sad moment. There's a loss here. I mean, a loss that can never be replaced. But how often do you go to funerals and you come home feeling joy? You lost somebody, but you just spent this afternoon over food in a church basement, laughing and sharing stories, and you are filled up with joy. Because joy is a super emotion that can sit on top of the sadness of grief. This is why funerals are so important in the grief process, because it brings joy into that equation. We need faces for our brains to read joy, to help us through these big emotions. Now I read this in the book, this is The Other Half of Church by Jim Wilder, that taught me the science. There are 6 big emotions: sadness, anger, fear, shame, disgust, and despair. all of those joy can attach to. And when joy attaches to it, we don't get stuck in that big emotion. So we don't isolate, but joy helps our brain to regulate that emotion, helps us make a new narrow pathway to find a way through out of this despair, out of this fear. And we are creating a new narrow pathway. We are able to lead our brains because our big, beautiful plastic brains were made to do that. So here's your first question. I'm building to something still. But first, how has joy helped you regulate these big, painful emotions? Share stories when all of a sudden something was overwhelming and then wasn't anymore, and how a face was involved with that, or a card in the mail, or some form of joy was involved with that, and what changed. Have that conversation with your people. We'll come back. All right, are you starting to see how our brain works and how joy, I mean, you see why Paul uses joy throughout the book of Philippians, right? What is this doing for us? Painful emotions are also often attached to people, so we want to isolate, right? Right? They hurt us. I'm going to go hide in my space over here. I don't want to come out. You see how isolation is attached to people sometimes, and I get it. But when we isolate from people, we're cutting off, not the same people that hurt you, by the way, but I'm talking about people. All right? When we isolate, we're cutting off the fuel our brain needs on this right side to deal with the pain. Then when we isolate, we turn to non-relational sources to stop the pain. These are also called pseudo-joys or fake joys. But the key word here is they are non-relational sources, such as shopping therapy, Netflix binges, every sort of addiction. Social media keeps your face away from people, doesn't it? So you find yourself spending 3 to 4 hours on social media, and you think this is bringing you joy. And because there's some kind of joy happening in your brain, this pseudo-joy is because your brain is seeking for joy, you think this is bringing you some kind of solution. I'll call these things numbing behaviors more often, but you see what you think this Netflix binge of 12 hours is what you need to recover from what happened to you. But your brain is seeking joy, and this is not replacing it. But we kind of lie to yourself, and you say, having this extra glass of wine is really what I need instead. But our brain really needs joy to heal, and that joy is attached to faces. So, and the crazy thing is, and think about this, the more we attach ourselves to faces, the more we're increasing our joy. The temptation of those pseudo-joys, those fake joys, decreases. I think every addiction program better have a way to help people learn how to increase their joy, because that will decrease the addiction. See what I mean? I think when Paul was writing this letter to the Philippians, and again he repeats joy as a comma throughout this entire letter, I think the visitors he received in prison, I think the letters he wrote to people with faces from prison, and the letters he received in prison, I think all of this joy sustained him in what could have been a long 2 to 3 years, maybe more, time of despair as he was awaiting trial and then received some crooked trials. All that was despair. But here he's just surrounded with joy. So this joy was a super emotion on top of the despair. And Paul wrote Philippians right out of that joy, this beautiful book, coming out of a really, really bad time of his life. Another thing about those pseudo-joys we talked about, these pseudo-joys are often followed up with shame. I mean, if you watch a 12 hours of Netflix binge, don't you feel some shame? And what shame does, very cleverly here, it causes us to turn our faces away from people. There's that isolation again. We hide in our shame. We make ourselves small in our shame. We pick that mask up again. So we're just fine. We're just fine. And behind that mask is shame. All of this shame removes us from joy, the very thing we need to help us pull out of this spiral. It is no wonder that Satan loves shame so much. It is no wonder that in the Garden of Eden, when Adam and Eve figured it out, they hid their faces from God. And God says to them, "Where are you?" God is seeking us. No matter where we hide in our shame, God continues to pursue and seek after us. He continues to turn his face towards us and give us peace. This is the beauty of it. One more big thought about this. In times of distress, in times of suffering, or times when we're stuck in one of these big 6 emotions, or also in times when we're spending too much time in left brain activities. I'm a writer. I could spend 2-3 days writing something and I'm stuck in this left brain and I'm not with people. I'm not getting my face out of the computer. I'm not connecting even hardly with my husband. You see what I mean? I'm stuck in this left brain activity so much. I start to feel outside of my body. Doesn't that make sense? When we're stuck in despair, or we're stuck in left brain activities, we start to feel outside of our bodies because there's no joy to get our right brain fuel kicking to get our left brain to work properly. Doesn't that make sense? Feeling joy in our bodies indicates that our right brain is functioning. And remember, we talked, earlier in this series, we talked about these 3 aspects of joy. And one of these aspects of joy is when you feel joy, there's always some sort of physical expression that comes with it, whether it's like, oh, joy, or you hug somebody, or you get this card with words in it that meant so much to you, and there's tears out of your eyes. Joy always has a physical expression attached to it because it puts us back into our bodies. I mean, are light bulbs popping on for you guys here? This is just, yes. When we feel outside of our bodies, we should be asking ourselves, who are the faces I'm looking for right now? Where's my joy in my life? And how can I reconnect with joy? How? So I can become back inside my body. And I want to do one more practice on this before we have another question. Non-verbal gratitude is a practice of joy. We talked about gratitude a lot here in this church. It is a practice. It is a prayer. It's a way of life. It's a way to lead your brain. fMRI scans all the time show people with gratitude practices literally change their brain. And so when you have like a non-verbal gratitude, you're just praying and you're just grateful for this and that, and you're seeing faces, and you got all of this going on. There's a warmth inside your body, right? I'm going to put a picture on the screen. This picture is adorable, isn't it? This is me, and that's my granddaughter, Jada. And those are the glasses I wear when I go to the beach. Thankfully, my granddaughter, Jada, lives in St. Petersburg, near the beach. And so when we go to the beach, I wear my sunglasses. And now my granddaughter decided to get sunglasses like Oma. Oh my goodness, the joy that this picture brings me is I can barely put words to it, but it fills my heart that she wants to be with me, that she wants to be like me. We got to share this memory together. If you look closer at the picture, we're eating breakfast at a Waffle House. That Waffle House breakfast was so much fun, mostly because it's a Waffle House breakfast, right? There's just joy in that system and eating and sharing food together. And then she put her sunglasses on in the Waffle House with me, and it just so much joy in that picture that it will be with me the rest of my life. I will remember that day, this moment, my granddaughter, this, and I'm just filled, I mean, I'm warmth. I feel it in my body, the love for my granddaughter from this one picture. Okay, good story, right? But what I just did there is I went from nonverbal gratitude to verbal gratitude. I went from the joy, nonverbal gratitude, and went to words, and our left brain runs on the speed of words, and I put words to my gratitude, and I just put my brain in full functioning top mode there. And I have this whole brain working to lead my life, to help me make better, wiser, and brave decisions when I get to put words to my gratitude and share it with other faces. Oh, I'm back inside my body again, and my heart feels full. So here's the question for you. What picture, whether it is framed or not, or just a memory, fills you with that nonverbal gratitude? Talk about that picture with the people you're gathering with right now. I'll be back. Good. We just put words to that nonverbal gratitude, moved it to your left brain, and didn't you all just have a moment there, and don't you all feel inside your body in that warmth? And this could be, you could journal your gratitude. I mean, this is part of the science, right? If you journal your gratitude, you put words to it, it went to your left brain. You could make, your prayers become prayers spoken, and it goes into your left brain. It becomes this. For my husband, he will write a song out of gratitude, and he just put words to his gratitude, and it comes out in song and music, and it's crazy good for this church. This is an act of worship. We are sharing our joy, putting it into words, and our whole brains are functioning. So for our benediction, I have a really deep thought for you. Hebrews 12:2 has this verse. It says, we do this, and this just means Hebrews 12:1 is all about running the good race. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus. Our brains look for faces, right? God's face shines on us. We keep keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. You may know that as the author and the finisher of our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, this is Jesus, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he's seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Again, remember Jesus incarnate here on earth. This cross is everything to us. This is the center point of our concentric circles. Right here is this cross. And here we have, because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross. In that suffering, he's able to put a supra-emotion of joy upon it. And this is what I mean by that. We know that on Good Friday, that the skies turned dark. It says that, it says that in the gospel accounts, between noon to 3 o'clock, it got really dark. We know in the book of Exodus, quite a few times there, when Moses would enter Mount Sinai and go up Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments or to meet with God, it says he would enter the dark clouds. When the tabernacle was consecrated and it was filled with God's glory, it says very clearly there in Kings and Chronicles that those were dark clouds that filled that temple. I believe on that cross, in those darkest, darkest, hardest moments of suffering, Jesus never lost the face of the Father, because the face of the Father in those dark clouds came near. And that helped him endure that suffering. This joy became a supra-emotion, and he endured that suffering. And he is now disregarding the shame. Did not have to look away. God did not look away from his son in shame that day. No. There was the joy of endurance happening here. And now he's seated in honor beside God's throne. This is what I believe happened on Good Friday. And because of this, I believe in Jesus. I need a Savior who is not me. And when I am suffering in this broken life I live, God's face shines upon me and gives me peace. And because I love God, I love people. I need people's faces in my life, and those people bring me joy. Some of those people crush my heart. But there's still other people who will carry my pain with me, and I will never forget them for the rest of my lives because of what they have done. This is how our brains work. This is how the Bible describes joy. I think I can depend on a Savior who's not me and find my way through. May you find your way through too. Amen.